to the YouTube stream for our Patreon members, you'll hear yourself talk, echo back the last bit of conversation. So just ignore it. And then we'll be ready to go as soon as that clicks in. So Adam, it'll feel weird because essentially I'm just going to, there we go, that's me there. It'll feel weird because you're going to be kind of silent for the first 15 minutes and we'll bring you in. If you can imagine, maybe you're backstage at a TV show in the green room, you're backstage at Q&A with Tony Jones.
Hopefully you brought your own refreshments and snack plate.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. And do I just my video stay on, or do I just?
Oh yeah, video stay on. You can laugh and listen and it's good to hear what's going on in the show, and then you can riff on it when you come in if you want to.
Why is Dan not on the screen?
Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I've got my screen protector, which is a 10-cent piece with the Queen's face on it.
I was so confused.
24th September.
And obviously, if you do want me to do a song, I hope I don't mess it up, but I'll need time to pick up my guitar and stuff. Edit that out.
Jordan Quinn, Lizzie Who.
I was frantically rewriting it just before I logged in.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we have to do it then.
Oh,
it'll be after Adam's conversation.
Yeah, it may still suck, but I'll give it a go.
Okay.
It won't suck in its essence. It just might. I just haven't played guitar for a while, so I might be like, what?
Hang on a second. All right, setting that to stream now. Publish now. Patrons only. Go, go, go. And great. All right, we are going there. We're going there. Hit record here.
My dog doesn't bark.
Great. Oh, all right. Very good. We've got a big script today. It's gonna be a big one. All right, here we go.
This podcast is supported in part by the Bertha Foundation.
G'day, Lewis.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Well, now I've got some good news about Patreon. Why are you laughing?
Well, I don't know. I always find this ridiculous. And the constant promises of paying our guests after months and months, I feel like I'm in a gaslight relationship with you and Patreon.
We're talking about gaslighting a little bit later on, and we will pay you, I'm sure, as soon as we break even on the show. But we have 101 supporters now, which is great. So Keith Williams, Mr. Kelly, Frankie Lee, Leon Sudrio, Dwayne Flanagan, they've all chipped in, become Patreon supporters this week. Big thank you to you, which means we are 2/3 of the way of me not having to pay for this show myself anymore, which I couldn't be happy about. To support the show, go to patreon.com/irrational fear. Another way you can support the show is by go to Go Neutral and offset your carbon emissions with your car. For every $90 sticker, Go Neutral will buy 3.5 tons of carbon offsets, which is about the same as the yearly average kind of emissions of your car. And then $5 of that will come to us. So go to the link in the show notes, and that's go to the link in the show notes, and that's Go Neutral. At the end of this week's podcast, we have an amazing lineup for next week's US election show. The lineup is amazing. I'm going to tell you about it at the end to hear it. So you're going to have to listen to the whole show, or it's a podcast. You can skip to the end. It's kind of up to you. I'm recording my end of Irrational Fear on Gadigal land in the Eora Nation. Sovereignty was never ceded. We need a treaty. Let's start the show. Tonight, when asked by a journalist if he would commit to a peaceful transition of power if he lost the 2020 election, Donald Trump said, "What's an election?" And that journalist was never seen again. And Immigration Minister Alan Tudge has been accused by a judge for the crime of withholding an innocent Afghani's personal liberty. He was also personally thanked by Peter Dutton for withholding an innocent Afghani's personal liberty. And Mel Gibson is set to remake Passion of the Christ because the first time round, he didn't quite nail it. It's the 25th of September, 2020. If you're listening to this in 2050, we're so sorry. We tried. This is Irrational Fear. Let's meet our fearmongers. Oh, hang on. Lewis is...
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I've disappeared. I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but for some reason, my video won't come back on. Do you mind? I really apologize. I'll leave and come back. I'll be right back.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
That's cool. That just reassures me that you're going to edit it. So.
No, this is edited. Don't worry. Yeah, no.
Oh, it's just how impressive you were with your flow. I was like, phew.
Good flow.
It's just going to be live. Shit.
But generally it brings, good energy, as long as everyone's face is moving.
Is that working?
I see your face, but that's okay.
Fuck. It's not working.
That's all right.
It just won't let me start my video. Should I restart? Can we bother waiting for 90 seconds? Is that too annoying? It feels fucking annoying.
Let's restart.
Sorry, everybody. I really apologize.
That's okay.
Bastard.
That's okay. I've got to figure out with Geraldine how I'm going to introduce her song at the bottom. So, Jez, what's the song about?
Oh, so originally it was written as a song about thanking the audience for coming, but I've it's called You Love It. And it's kind of been rewritten a couple of times for the fact we can't perform live. So I've changed the first couple of lines to thanks for listening to the pod today while we struggle through this bloody plague. We've been online for a while. We don't know when we'll get back on stage. Basically, when you can come out, we'd really love you to come.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Please don't forget us.
That's great, Geraldine.
Yeah, I'll try to get it right.
I was just wondering about that because I'm trying to figure out how to do a tour next year, and it's like Festival hasn't kind of said they're going to go back, have they yet?
No, I mean Melbourne Fringe has had things open. Midsummer's talking to me about something, which is January, February. Right. But no, comedy hasn't said anything.
I want to try and figure out because I know Tamworth is cancelled, and
when's Tamworth usually? Be summer.
I think it's March. Tamworth
March
Music Festival.
Oh Jesus! Okay.
Maybe it is earlier. Yeah, but it was It's just trying to figure out, if we can all go and do the things.
Well, I was 2 years strong with Circus Oz. I finally got employed, and then it was like, oh shit. No! How do you do no contact circus? You don't.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, they've had a massive shake-up. Yeah. Anyway. They treated us well.
Are they still solvent? Are they going to be kicking around? I know a lot of them.
They're a 40-year strong company, so I hope so. But they basically had to shake up a lot. And they had a new director, not artistic director. So it was kind of, she'd just come in. So maybe that was good that they went, right. Throw all that out.
Here we go. I'm just going to start the jokes again. Just laugh again. All right, here we go.
Everybody.
Let's go. Tonight, when asked by a journalist if he would commit to a peaceful transition of power if he lost the 2020 election, Donald Trump said, "What's an election?" And the journalist was never seen again. And Immigration Minister Alan Tudge has been accused by a judge for the crime of withholding an innocent man's personal liberty. An innocent Afghani man's personal liberty. He's also been personally thanked by Peter Dutton for withholding an innocent Afghani man's personal liberty. And Mel Gibson is set to remake Passion of the Christ because the first time round, he didn't quite nail it. It's the 25th of September 2020. If you're listening to this in 2050, we're so sorry. We tried. This is Irrational Fear. Let's meet our fearmongers for tonight. Queensland raised but chooses to suffer in Sydney. She was 2017's Raw Comedy State finalist but plans on being a 2020 completionist. It's Lizzie Who.
Hello.
Lizzie, what are you looking forward to most in completing 2020?
I'm just trying to hang in there, I think.
Aren't we all? And she's going stir crazy in her hermetically sealed Melbourne domus. Quite frankly, we booked her because she's just happy to talk to anyone. It's the rock god of Australian comedy, Geraldine Quinn.
Thank you. It's good that you didn't use the feminine of God. It's clearly a pangenderal term.
Totally. What if Kate Blanchett's an actor, you're a god.
I'm really sorry I can't fix anything in the world.
Geraldine, is this experience kind of like going out?
Well, it's very sweet of you to think that I still went out. I am 45 after all, and I live south of the river, which if you live in Melbourne means no one ever talks to you again.
And he's been introduced so many times on this podcast. There's no need for an introduction, but I'll do one anyway out of sheer professional courtesy. It's Lewis Hobber.
Hello, Daniel. What a joy to be here. Geraldine, I've been kind of imagining that when we're not here, you're just talking to like four soccer balls with faces painted on.
Pretty much.
Coming up a little later on the podcast, we're going to be hearing from Rupert Murdoch, and we'll be talking gas and mirrors with the leader of the Greens, Adam Bandt. But first, here's a word from this week's sponsor.
It's the largest recession in history and the PM's gone parliamental. Coronavirus stimulus is said to be slash. JobKeeper was $1,500 a fortnight, now $1,200 a fortnight. JobSeeker was $550 a fortnight, now just $250 a fortnight. Economic stimulus reduced by 30, 40 and 50% off. The unemployed have never been more motivated to get a job that doesn't exist. But wait, there's more. During the largest ever climate emergency, the PM is giving billions to the fossil fuel industry for gas plants, pipelines, and fracking. Instead of ending emissions, he's making more of them. Every day is opposite day, taking the money for the poor and giving it to the rich. You've got to have a go to get a go before it's all gone, gone, gone. Terms and conditions apply. For donations of $6 million or more to the Liberal Party, see the PDS for details.
Fearmongers, return your tray tables to the upright position. The first fear tonight is the Qantas round trip. This week, Qantas broke the record for the fastest selling flight in history, and it's a flight to nowhere, which is still better than flying to Adelaide. The flight, which sold out in just 10 minutes of being on sale, is a 7-hour sightseeing trip from Sydney around the country. Yes, if you look out the left-hand side, you'll see the long white clouds over the Gold Coast, and then the long white clouds over Uluru. And if you look out the right-hand side, you'll see the long white clouds of the, oh no, that's just the Great Barrier Reef. Don't worry about that. And you can sit in the back for $800, or you can sit up the front for $4,000. And for $8,000, you can drive to Sydney Airport and have a coffee, which is great. They also have the full in-flight entertainment system, which you can spend $800 watching Tenet the way Christopher Nolan purely intended. A Qantas spokesperson actually said, people clearly miss travel and the experience of flying, and clearly those people have never tried ketamine. Fearmongers, what is appealing about this experience to you? Lizzie who?
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea why this is appealing. Maybe it's like really devout points people. That's what I'm thinking.
Those point riders, yeah.
Yeah, those people that need to get their status back to whatever the highest one is. I don't know what that is.
What, so they can hang around in the Qantas lounge on their own?
Yeah.
There's nothing like a bowl of cornflakes, except when it's at the Qantas lounge. That feels good when you're having a bowl of cornflakes in the Qantas lounge. That's a special bowl of cornflakes. I'm
so sorry. It might be the fact that there's a pandemic on, but I was convinced for a second. Then you said Ebola cornflakes, and I'm quite tired. But Dan, you're on the edge, man. Come on.
I believe you can get that in the Tiger Lounge, the Ebola.
Wow.
Yeah, a bowler in the Qantas lounge is still the second worst thing after Sky News being professionally broadcast. I love the flight to nowhere. I think it's romantic. It would be very disappointing. People used to do those surprise flights where you take a partner and you go like, don't pack a bikini and a coat, babe, because you don't know where we're going, and then just to end up back home.
Yeah, this is pack the house key because we're coming right back.
Yeah.
They also because Qantas have just been selling everything. A few weeks ago, they put all of their in-flight meals on for sale, and they sold out in like no time at all. But then this week, they actually put up for sale their drinks carts filled to the brim with the booze, which is amazing. But it's just like, I will, as much booze as you could drink on that drinks cart, it will never be able to replicate the feeling of having like 1.5 bad red wines and then weeping to a Pixar film.
You can do that at home.
I'm crying on my couch. I don't need to pay $4,000.
Those carts sold for $1,000 and they're already sold out. They have up to 160 miniature wine bottles, and I'm thinking, who's buying that? Grant Denyer? Doesn't he have enough?
Maybe. It's like a deceased estate. That's what
Well, it's
but with soy treats.
Well, it's totally true. I mean, I stood on Bondi Beach and I watched the last Qantas 747 fly out of Australia. That was a tear went down my face because I love kind of aviation. But what's interesting, you say it's like a deceased estate. I don't think it's too far from the truth, because Qantas today, it's just come out that they've been underpaying workers through JobKeeper, and I like it that they're selling all the booze to pay their workers back.
Wow.
Oh, it's a pleasant idea. I particularly like that somebody was quoting, oh, people miss travel. They miss the experience of flying. I wouldn't have picked you as one of those people, Dan, but I don't know. That sounds like bullshit to me. And the only thing magical about flying is the fact that you can fart with impunity and it just disappears somewhere. Maybe if they could find a way to harness that power, then they'd be in a better position economically.
That's how you can make renewable flight, by putting a tube in everybody's bum and powering the plane with methane.
Hey, look, we're lonely.
I kind of hope it's like a really wet weather day.
Yeah, there's this like terrible turbulence and they can't leave the tarmac. It's like, I'm so sorry. And all the people in the plane are going, who cares?
Yeah.
Even longer on the plane.
A QF flight to nowhere is delayed.
Yeah.
Do you think that like a stewardess has had to go through the whole routine? Because they must have known how pointless that was.
Yeah, they must know. They must know. I think I'd love to see the air hosts get on and just be like, you know the drill. Just sit down, have a good time.
And they did the local time when they got back. The local time is exactly the same as when you left.
Yeah.
I just like the idea if they could just hire a whole bunch of out-of-work performers to run past the windows holding like portable plastic trees and then throwing seagulls across the way. And we could all really give a boost to all of our industries. But no, just sell the booze.
We could have a concert on the plane.
ONJ would be up for that.
Music. Beautiful.
Yeah, get all those Qantas kids. So you sang the song on Uluru. What are they doing now?
Oh, my nephew was in that choir.
Are they cancelled now for that?
No, they're all old now. They're all executives at Qantas. They're firing all
Alan Joyce just walks around with sort of 400 choir boys behind him singing.
They're his bodyguards.
Yeah.
Fear number 2, the federal government has announced they're upgrading the NBN. Finally, we can party like it's 2007. It's the technology of today, sometime before the decade is out. This comes after 8 years of insisting that fibre to the node was perfectly good internet. Like when you really wanted a skateboard and your dad insists he's making you a perfectly good one in the shed out of 2 planks and a milk crate. It's not a skateboard, Dad. It's a fucking milk crate. And sure, we could have had this over a decade ago, but Tony Abbott and the Liberal Party dismissed fibre to the home as an irresponsible, gold-plated option. On the other hand, for the amount they've wasted on out-of-date, inefficient copper wires, we could have actually plated it in gold. If you remember, Tony Abbott dismissed the NBN as essentially a video entertainment system when it was actually really important for universities and businesses and local libraries and everyone else ever who is now unemployed and stuck at home watching their video entertainment systems. Lewis, when you get it, what are you going to do with all that fancy internet?
Oh, my God. Well, first things first, I'm going to jump right on this podcast, Dan, and just get crystal clear audio from you to me. It's one of the most frustrating and just writ large moments of Australian politics. Everyone knew at the time that this was happening. Like, this is the most predictable car crash and the slowest one. Like, there was not a single expert. There's not a single person who used the internet back then that didn't see this coming.
I don't know, Lizzie. Annoying. I don't know if it happened for Lizzie and Geraldine, but when you said frustrating, there was a great glitch on frustrating.
Oh, really?
It was a little. How smug is
Lizzie?
Rudd at the moment?
Oh, sorry, Lizzie, you have to do that.
How smug is Rudd at the moment? I've just seen it.
That's the only downside to this. I would almost sacrifice good internet to lose Kevin Rudd's smugness.
Yeah.
Well, Lewis, I don't know if you caught the conversation that he and I had a few weeks ago on this podcast, but one of the things he did say was that that in terms of stimulus, what the government should do is complete the NBN. And 3 weeks later, that's exactly what they've come out to do. I'm like, yes, irrational fear is finally setting the agenda.
Maybe they listened to him because of his excellent Russian accent on that episode. I don't know.
Oh, thank you for listening. Now, Rudd was on this podcast just a couple of weeks ago talking about that. He also claimed that Rupert Murdoch, that is, coerced the government into delivering slow internet so Netflix wouldn't compete with Foxtel. You'd be surprised that Rupert himself seemed very pleased with this week's announcement, so he made an announcement of his very own.
Hello there, it's Lord and Saviour Rupert Murdoch here. Now, I'm pleased to announce that now that News Corp has finally gotten round to allowing the federal government to put in fibre to the home, so that's wonderful. It's super fast internet. It's over fibre optic cable, so it's so futuristic. You'll think you're living in the year 2000. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you do this earlier, Rupert? Well, you couldn't watch sports streaming on demand. But you can now with Kayo, you see, which I own. You couldn't watch Foxtel streaming on demand, but you can now with Binge, which I own. You couldn't watch Parliament streaming on demand either, and I own that too. I have for a long time, but no one watches it, so it doesn't matter. So look, you're bloody welcome, all right? And if you want to watch the 2021 United States Civil War live and uncut and unedited by me, Fox News has the streaming rights to that too, which I own. So bugger off and get some subscriptions. Thank you very much. Go Trump.
Very good. Australia isn't the only country with terrible internet. Our final fear tonight comes from the Welsh village of Aberhausen, where at precisely 7 a.m. every day, the broadband signal would cut out. And after days of testing and replacing cables, engineers worked out that the problem was caused by one village's old TV. Geraldine, can you relate to this old guy's TV problems?
I really can. I mean, apart from the fact that if you are on the live stream and you can see my study, it's clear I never throw anything out. So I would be exactly the person that has that TV. I just thought this is such an adorable story, because when they worked out what they had to send all these engineers in with radio wave signal receivers to try to work out what it was, because it could be a whole bunch of different electrical things.
It was like Ghostbusters.
It was, yeah. And they finally find out it was this one person, and they were so embarrassed that they didn't want to be named. So I'm in Melbourne in week 8 of stage 4 lockdown, and we've got cashed up bogans from Carrum Downs going into the city and getting chased through Elwood Park by police on horses, screaming about their rights because they can't get a sausage at Bunnings. And yet this person was just so embarrassed, his sense of society and his duty to his fellow villagers, that he was like, please don't name me. I mean, they should be setting up a GoFundMe so he could get a smart TV, for goodness sake. What an amazing story. It's so sweet.
Connects to broadband. What was he watching at 7 a.m.? Would he have to admit to turning onto the UK's version of Sunrise?
I have no idea. What was he doing watching television at 7? It was probably just to get the weather. Or maybe, like me, just left it on for company. I mean, whoops, I've got a rich and varied social life.
It would be, given all of the like coronavirus conspiracies, imagine all the people in Wales like stuck in their house and they look out the window and there's just 10 people in suits with little spectrometers zipping around. Like, I can't believe that hasn't spiraled into a new conspiracy theory.
It would
it's a small town too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was only 400 people.
Yeah.
If you ruined the internet in the small town I grew up in right now, you would be lynched.
Yeah.
There's 400 people is twice as many as allegedly turned up at the Dandenong South protests the other week.
I love this quote from the retired builder. His name Bill Childs. He's 79. He said, "We've had broadband problems for as long as I can remember." He's 79. Wow, that's a lot kind of broadband problems. In the past few years, we must have had 30 or 40 engineers to the house. I need broadband to get my grocery shopping done. I'm almost 80. With COVID especially, I rely on shopping to be delivered. Don't we all, Bill Childs? Don't we all?
I don't know if there's my dad's 80 and he tried to do online shopping and no go. That is not. He's lying. That guy's lying.
Yeah, he's looking at porn and he doesn't know how to say it.
And you know what? Good on him. Sex positive. Don't be ageist.
I'm not gonna yuck his yum.
If you'd said that in a Welsh accent, that would have been even more chef's kiss.
Oh, I'm not going to yuck his yum if I'm we. No, I can't even do that. Terrible. I'm cancelling myself from this podcast. Our interview guest for tonight was a bright young man when he first entered politics. Just a few years later now, he's just another bright old man in politics. It's the honourable member for Melbourne and leader of the Greens, Adam Band. Adam, thanks for joining us on A Rational Fair.
Thanks for having me on. I watched the trip a couple of nights ago. It was just like that just then. That was amazing.
Were there old TVs in the trip causing broadband problems?
Not quite. It was a bit more advanced than that.
Now, Adam, we got you on this podcast to talk gas. Let's talk gas together. Let's turn methane into usthane. I'm just going to do a bit of a rant before we kick off. Now, all the energy announcements over the last couple of weeks have really got me down. And it's our emissions that should be down, not me. So let's do a quick recap. Over the last couple of weeks, the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, the agency designed to fund renewable energy, is now going to be used to create emissions-intensive fossil fuel projects. Hooray! Like methane gas generation and hydrogen generation is also on the cards. Now, that normally sounds like a clean fuel, but under this plan, they plan to make hydrogen using electricity made from gas power. Yes! Hydrogen made from gas is like eating a cucumber made from recycled dildos. You know, it looks like a cucumber, it tastes like a cucumber, but I can't help but think it's been used for some other purpose, and I'm going to be sick later. ARENA would also pay for magical technology like carbon capture storage. Just like Harry Potter, this technology only exists in books. And this is interesting from Alan Finkel. He had this quote when this announcement was being made. He said, "I know some may be skeptical because carbon capture permanent storage hasn't been commercially viable in the electricity generation industry." During the presentation for this event, the chief scientist was saying it doesn't work. Also, this week, no emissions reduction targets were set. That's right. The Minister for Emissions Reduction hasn't actually set a target for the industry to get their emissions reduced. And that's his whole job. The renewable energy target didn't get re-implemented. It was just kind of left abandoned and it just left to fly away in the wind. And Scott Morrison also this week on Insider said, renewables don't need our help. They pay for themselves. The market can look after them. Whereas fossil fuels still need $29 billion US a year in subsidies. You know, one day those fossil fuel industries will hopefully break even and maybe they can pay some fucking tax. Morrison said on Insider also, you know, we're focused on lowering emissions, which is why we're building new gas plants and seeing if coal is viable and not signing up to any targets to lower any emissions. He also said, I'm not interested in signing things. I'm interested in doing things. That's why we're investing in carbon capture storage, a technology that's not working at any scale anywhere in the world. CCS is the very definition of not doing anything. And when it came to reaching about net zero emissions by 2050, he said, we have a plan to achieve that in the second half of next century. That's not 2050. That's 2100. Here's the kicker. Keaton Joshi wrote in Renewable Economy, at the rate of yearly emissions drops between 2020 and 2030 in the Australia's government projections, he reckons that Australia will reach net zero emissions by 2300. 2300, according to the government's own paperwork. Only one can assume that ScoMo is, you know, rapidly trying to accelerate emissions because he wants to bring on the rapture early for his Hillsong mates. And maybe that is a plan. It's a good plan. And this is also the plan. This whole technology plan, this whole technology roadmap is the plan that Australia is taking to COP26. Yes, the whole world is rapidly accelerating their own emissions reduction to be net zero by 2030 even. China declared this week they're going carbon neutral by 2060. Yes, not even the country that's putting Tibetans in forced labor camps for the Olympics is evil enough to buy our coal. We're going to be going up to Glasgow and showing that we don't have a renewable energy target. We don't have any renewables. We're not investing. Now we're investing in billions of technology that doesn't work. We're going to make hydrogen with methane and we're going to frack ourselves to death. Well, global leaders at the Conference of Parties 26, what do you think of our fucking plan? Well, Australia has a history of cheating and stealing and tricking us all at this conference. So, you know, like they did in Kyoto and Paris, why should the fact they've turned up and taken a giant shit in the middle of the living room be surprising? It's not. We expected it. That's why we're implementing carbon tariffs on imports from countries like Australia so they can take a shit anywhere in the world and then they'll be able to pay for it. Adam, how did I go?
That's summed it up really well. I might pinch a few of those lines if I can. I mean, what everyone's been rightly, like we've kind of dropped everything to deal with the coronavirus at the moment. And like we're all stuck in Melbourne in lockdown. No one likes it, but we understand that we got to do it. But it's occupied the national agenda, and rightly so, because it's literally a matter of life and death. But while that's been happening, the announcement after announcement has been coming in about what is happening on the climate crisis front. And just this week, we got told that that you referred to the Paris Agreement and the parties to all of the Paris Agreement, which we're going to meet this year and are going to meet again next year. A new update has come out that has said that the parties to the Paris Agreement, we all agreed to try and limit global warming to less than 2 degrees, because that's generally accepted as being go above that and the chain reaction might become unstoppable, right? And you might not be able to rein it in. And it's clear as day that the pledges that everyone has made are not going to limit us to 2 degrees. And we got told this week that even if we do limit global warming to 2 degrees, sea levels might rise by a couple of metres this century. And forget about the Great Barrier Reef, it's gone forever. So we're talking about massive, massive changes, even if we meet the targets that are set out in Paris. Scott Morrison's targets have us on track for 3 degrees, right? So not 2 degrees, but 3 degrees. And the Bureau of Meteorology came along to the Senate and told the Senate committee that in Australia, current targets are going to mean something more like 4.4 degrees by the end of this century. So during the lifetime of today's primary school students. So we're talking about massive, massive devastation in Australia and a huge threat. And there's a simple thing that we've got to do in order to increase our ambition so that we stay below 2 degrees, which is to phase out coal and gas. Like, we can't be talking about new coal and gas. The plan has to be, how do we take the existing coal and gas that we've got and phase it out? But instead, not only is Morrison not talking about that, and he's not talking about gas instead of coal, he's talking about gas as well as coal. So not only is he not coming along with a plan to phase it out, he's coming on with a plan to take money that should be going to solar and wind or to schools and hospitals and now use that to actively expand the amount of gas that we suck out of the ground and the amount of coal that we dig up, right? Public subsidies should not be going to increase fossil fuel, but that's where they're going.
It's so counterintuitive to dismantle an arena like this. I mean, it's not being dismantled. They've been giving a remit. Of the last 10 years, they've been there to invest in renewable energy, and now they've been told to skip renewable energy and invest in these fossil fuel energy systems. And that is... And one of the things, Adam, that I don't understand is they said the board is going to remain the same and everyone there is going to be kind of focused on this new mission. But how many people on that board are going to want to stay on that board and be at an organisation like that is actually facilitating the exact antithesis of the mission that they were there to create? Well,
the government has set up a new steering committee to oversee this new genius of a plan. The head of Coca-Cola
sounds like a fucking committee. They're setting up a fucking committee.
The head of Coca-Cola is on it, but no one from renewable energy, right? That is like the head of Coca-Cola. I don't like what is going on there. That the head of Coca-Cola.
It makes sense when you're talking about carbon emissions.
Yeah, maybe he misread the brief. Maybe he misread the brief. He thought this is a great opportunity for soft drinks. I don't know, but this is the direction that they're taking us. And you talked about hydrogen before, right? And like hydrogen, in a sense, is in some ways could be the perfect fuel because you burn hydrogen, it turns back into water. And you've got in South Korea and in Japan, they're starting to shift their vehicles to hydrogen. They're looking for countries to export hydrogen to them. And so, if you could make it renewably by splitting water using renewable electricity, then you'd have basically, and Australia is so well placed to do that. You have an amazing
Adam, please tell me of a nation that has lots of sunshine and water and that can use solar to create hydrogen. Is there one? I'm not so sure.
That's right. And instead,
is there a nation that is girt by water?
Girt.
We need a nation that's girt by water.
It's the time when girt might actually mean something, something useful. But instead, what we're doing is, as you alluded to, they're now going to subsidise through the Renewable Energy Agency and potentially through the other agencies as well, the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, using gas, sucking more gas out of the ground, so not existing gas, opening up new gas fields, sucking it out, burning that to generate electricity, using that electricity to split water to create hydrogen, and then, according to some unicorn technology that doesn't exist, burying all the CO2 emissions generated by that back underground. Like, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. But when you consider that the gas and coal lobby have donated about $9 million to the establishment parties over the last few years, the whole thing starts to make a bit more sense.
Adam, we get some pretty good donations on the Patreon. I think we could match 9 million and See if we could buy them off.
Had this idea earlier this week, and I was like, what if we had a Kickstarter to raise $10 million to donate to both major parties to encourage them to limit emissions? It's almost like paying some kind of tax.
Fantastic idea. It sounds like you might be in slightly in the wrong business, but it's the amount. Like, it's a pretty good investment for the coal and gas companies. Pretty good return on investment for them. Donate $9 million to Liberal and Labor, and in return you get to suck as much gas and coal out of Australia as you want, and whilst we burn. And this is what is so distressing about this at the moment, is that there doesn't seem there seems to be. I think Morrison's taking the approach that it's okay, I'm dealing with the climate crisis, and then like letting people believe that he's got it under control without telling them the truth about the scale of the challenge that we're facing. Like, we just do not have the capacity to expand our gas and coal production, let alone at public expense. And the thing about gas is that it's not a cleaner fuel. It's as dirty as coal when you take into account how much leaks as you suck it out of the ground, and that methane is about 86 times more potent than CO2. You start to understand why gas is not a transition fuel. They've both got to be kept in the ground.
It's far more efficient at holding heat in the atmosphere, methane. And here's the thing with the CCS. They put this out. They say we're gonna do this fucking CCS stuff. But there's no regulation for them to actually impose it on the emitters to actually use it and capture 100% of emissions. They're not even doing that. Just saying, we're just going to experiment to see if it works. And there are 2 or 3 plants that are kind of working, but not at scale. CCS shouldn't be discounted as a technology that's not going to work. It just doesn't work yet. But still, there's no kind of backing to actually use it 100% to capture all of the emissions.
Well, it doesn't work at scale at the moment. Nowhere's been able to get it to work in Australia. We've tipped $1.3 billion of public money into it, and it still is unable to function. And then there's go back to first principles. Like, why dig something out of the ground, burn it, and then have to find a way of sticking all of the pollution that it causes back in the ground, and hope to hell that you can store it safely and that it doesn't escape and disrupt the water supply or have other consequences that we haven't thought of? Why go through all of that with an unproven technology when there's proven technologies of solar and wind that will do it and do it cheaper? Right?
I mean, why do people climb Everest, Adam? It's a challenge.
It's there. It's there.
It's there. We've seen the gas.
If the big coal and gas corporations want to spend their own money on that, then let them. But I don't think we should be taking money from schools and hospitals to fund it.
It's so frustrating.
Can I ask, as you and Dan obviously know a lot more about the details than me, but Adam, we all hear heaps of experts saying that this is a bad idea. What's their pitch? Like, apart from giving kickbacks to the donors, what is their argument for it being a good idea?
They say, look, we need gas as a transition fuel as we switch over to renewables, because renewables are intermittent, so we need something to balance them out. But A, we've got batteries now, and B, the chief scientist said about that, the same chief scientist who just gave that glowing endorsement to carbon capture and storage also said, look, but actually I think there's enough gas in the system already that we don't actually need more gas to do it. We've got enough gas-fired power stations in the country already to be able to balance it out. If we wanted to get to, 70, 80, 90, 100% renewables, we wouldn't need to build a single new gas-fired power station, according to the chief scientist. So their pitch kind of really is paper thin, but they're hoping that no one's going to press them on it.
There's another argument Angus Taylor has for jobs, saying it's going to create 130,000 jobs, but nobody has seen how those jobs are actually going to come about. And there's another great thing. Where I read a tweet from Simon Holmes à Court saying that 400 megawatts of power delivered by a gas plant had attached to it about 15 jobs. It's like, what all the job you're going to create? There's nothing. You're not going to be creating any jobs. It's so bizarre.
There's just so much in Australia that needs to be done. We've got here in Victoria, we've got about 80 to 100,000 people on the public housing waiting list. We've got homelessness crisis across the country. If we want to create jobs to build our way out of this terrible recession that we're in, let's build more public housing. The jobs aren't going to be there in building new gas-fired power plants. They're going to be there in expanding our aged care sector, in building more public housing, And in building renewables, there's going to be much more jobs in building renewables than there is in gas plants, which don't take a lot to maintain when they're up and running. So it's not about jobs.
One of the big 5 consulting firms, Ernst & Young, says there's about 1 million jobs worth of jobs there in renewables, and that to completely change the way we operate, there's 1 million jobs there to kind of reinvigorate and rebuild Australia as a carbon neutral.
The notorious greenies, Ernst & Young, of course.
Very green.
Ernst & Young and Pinko and Greeno.
Well, this is the whole point, though. Like, it's getting, you go to, obviously not the US. Like, the US has got with the US, Donald Trump talks fondly about our immigration and energy policies, and you can see why. So we're kind of sadly leading the world in that respect. But you go to other places and climate, like Germany, for example, and climate isn't as politicized in the way that it is here. And like, there's just an increasing acceptance across the board that we're heading towards a cliff at about 200 k's an hour. And the coalition saying, oh, well, let's slow down to 180 before we go over the edge. Labor saying, oh, maybe it should be 150. But everyone else who's not in the pockets of the coal and gas industry is saying, oh, hang on, look, something's wrong here, and we need to change course and do it pretty quickly. And outside of Australia, like, as you said in your opening, we're going to front up to these global negotiations at the Conference of the Parties next year with this terrible, terrible plan put forward by Angus Taylor, and we're going to be laughed out of the room. But sadly, these agreements work by consensus, and so Australia sits there, drags its heels, and drags ambition down, and our kids are going to pay for it.
How do we kind of fight back? What is the? I mean, this government's in for another little bit. How do you kind of push back in this kind of space where this is the optimum time for them to put something in, because they've got a couple more years to run and they're doing the hardest thing they possibly can right now in the middle of the pandemic where no one's looking? How do you push back?
Well, I'm kind of optimistic about this, actually, because like in Melbourne, next to my seat is a couple of seats that the Liberals hold, and one of them is the Treasurer's seat, and they had to spend $1 million holding that seat because the Greens were on the verge of winning it, and they spent $1 million telling the electorate how much they cared about climate change and what a great plan they had to deal with the climate crisis. And the same in these inner city seats in Sydney, and increasingly in some regional seats as well. And I think they're thinking that, oh, well, we're in at the moment, we're riding high in the polls because of the pandemic, we can get away with whatever we want. But people aren't stupid, and if you, it's 2020 feels pretty long, and it feels like a long time ago. But over this summer, like people were losing their lives, people were losing their houses. 1 billion animals were perished in the fires that we saw, and in inner city Melbourne and in Sydney and in Canberra, you couldn't go about your usual business because the smoke was so thick it was hazardous. And I think that those kind of challenges and that kind of crisis hasn't gone away. And increasingly, people, I think, across the political spectrum are seeing through this, and the polling bears that out. And it's just a matter of finding ways of bringing that political pressure to bear on the government, which is why the government even has to dress up, coming back to the question before about what's their pitch, they have to dress up gas as a climate-friendly solution. And, we've got the answer is to take the fight up to them in Parliament about this. And Labor doesn't know where it's standing. They're talking about environmentally sustainable gas like clean coal, but I think increasingly people know that no, you've got to keep it in the ground. And I think come the next election, if we do our job right as the Greens, as people who are concerned about this across the country, they're going to be in for a bit of a rude shock in a couple of seats, and in a very finely balanced parliament where you've got the likes of Zali Steggall winning seats off the Liberals, and Helen Haynes in regional Victoria, seats that were Conservative seats now going to pro-climate action independents and to Greens. I think a change is coming, and it's not going to be that far away.
What is Joel Fitzgibbon doing? What's his play?
Well, he's he's Anthony Albanese's hand-picked resources spokesperson. So he's giving the official line of the Labor Party, and he represents a lot of the views of a large section of the Labor Party. He's been persistently, and the Labor Party's always had these people who advance the lines of the coal and gas industry, just like the Liberal Party does as well. And I think he's pushing very, very hard to make sure that I don't know if you remember, but back when Julia Gillard was in strife, Joel Fitzgibbon was one of the first people to go on television and help tear her down and sit there and basically say, I've got no confidence in my Prime Minister. And I think that he's doing the same again. He's out there saying, look, no, this is what the Labor Party's position is going to be. And if I have to burn down the village to save it, I will. And I think, sadly, he's got a lot of support in the Labor Party.
Wow. Thanks for the optimistic end.
But I think, but he's got a lot of support. But I don't think it's not where people are at. You know, I mean, like there's like, yes, let's have a plan for people in the Hunter Valley. I mean, I used to be, before I came to this gig, I represented workers in the Latrobe Valley in coal-fired power stations. I think I don't know if I'm the only member of Parliament. I'm probably the only Green with a picture of a coal-fired power station hanging on their wall. It was a gift to me from the workers and the unions in the Latrobe Valley after I helped them win a case after privatisation. Like, we've got to have a plan to support people, including in the Hunter Valley. So, like, he is right to be saying, I'm going to fight for the interests of people, but the long-term interests of the people in the Hunter Valley or the Latrobe Valley is to make sure that their kids don't go to every Christmas holidays wondering when the next bushfire is going to hit. And so it's about the alternative that I think ultimately would satisfy even, the staunchest Labor member in coal mining seats is a proper transition plan that looks after those workers, gives them mining jobs in other areas that are needed for renewables. But at the moment, they haven't yet bit that bullet.
You're someone who's worked hard, very long with workers in those kinds of communities. And I would assume they're kind of power generation agnostic. They probably just want to be looked after and have a good job to look after their families, right? It's not like something they would go, well, I'm a coal man through and through. All I want to do is dig up the coal. Surely they're interested in doing, finding a just way to transition to a new job themselves.
Yeah, and look, in places like the Latrobe Valley, I think there's a real sense of energy pride and I think we owe people in the Latrobe Valley, for example, I'm using that because it's an area I'm familiar with in Victoria. We owe people there a debt. Like they've helped power our society and they help keep the lights on. And we owe them an obligation to come up with a meaningful transition plan, and it's got to be meaningful. And I think if there's one thing that hasn't been done well enough in the past by those of us who really want climate action, it's been to say, well, look, here's a plausible and credible jobs plan that's going to support you and your community. But look, if we want to get to a zero carbon world, we're going to need an increase in the number of batteries that we've got, for example. Now, that's going to involve minerals. That's going to involve mining. And so there's a very, I think, plausible message to take to people in Queensland and elsewhere that the best job for a coal miner is another mining job, or is a job working on strengthening our transmission lines or building lines. These are kind of jobs that people in these areas know. And it's not rocket science to do it. It just takes a bit of commitment. And I think if we go there and say, look, what we're trying to do is we're trying to say our way of life, there's a threat to civilization and there's a threat to you and your kids' safety. We're trying to stop it. And we're wanting to make sure that you have a decent and secure job along the way. I think people will respond well. It's just that it hasn't been done yet by either of the other parties.
That's definitely something I noticed. I did a lot of touring up in regional Queensland, and the disconnection between being somebody from South and Melbourne in particular, between their perception of a lot of people's perceptions in these smaller towns of what, for example, the Greens represent compared to what seems like, Dan, you were using words like it seems obvious to us. It does seem obvious to us, but when you're in, Hewenden and there's like literally nothing around you for however far, and I see a guy with a ute that's whatever expletive the Green sticker on the back, and I go, I don't think I'm the person to talk about this now. But what you're saying is exactly right. That idea of someone's got to bring that practical, these are the opportunities that we've got that are within your skill set to people, so that they can actually see that it isn't the bogeyman that they imagine it is, that it's actually beneficial to everyone. And that's why we get I'm sorry, I grew up in the 80s. I was scared of so much stuff when I was a kid. And it feels like, how are we here? I thought we were doing this when I was in primary school.
I think the frustrating thing right now is that now it's like crunch time. Now is like the time for action. Now is the time to get things done and sorted. And now is the time to do it. And we are doing every single thing that is the opposite of what needs to be done. and that there is there's no will, there's no ambition, and there is literally only a group of malevolent actors who are doing their worst, doing their absolute worst, and that is not what leadership is.
Well, they're the ones, but this is where I guess I feel a bit optimistic about it, because like we're in a parliament where they've only got a couple of seat majority, so and we've got there on the crossbench, it's an interesting crossbench that includes me and Bob Caddo and Andrew Wilkie and Helen Haynes and Zali Steggall and Rebecca Sharkey, and there's put Bob Caddo to one side for the moment. All the rest of us actually want to have a shared commitment to act on climate. Now, all it would take is at the next election, if there's a small swing and a couple of seats fall, we're back in 2010 territory of another power share in Parliament. And I think the prospect there of, and maybe another Liberal loses their seat to a pro-climate independent like Zali Steggall somewhere, maybe the Greens pick up another seat somewhere. All of a sudden, bang, we are back in a power share in Parliament again. And there will be a very, very strong willingness to take action on climate. And I think, like, if you ask people now, the carbon price that we had that was actually working when we had a minority parliament that Tony Abbott repealed, do you think that Abbott repealing it was the right thing? People, when people are polled, people say no, it wasn't the right thing. Sadly, we learned our lesson after having Tony Abbott. And I think we could be back in that situation again very, very soon, within a year or two. And then I think things could move very, very quickly. And I think this built up public pressure will ultimately become irresistible. So I feel a bit more optimistic about that.
Yeah, who knows? It could be like the NBN. They might just change their mind. They're like, hey, you know what? We were wrong about that.
Yeah, but this is how it works, right? That's what happened with the Banking Royal Commission too. Like, we pushed and pushed and pushed on that, and they said, oh no, we're never going to do it. We're never going to do it. And then bang, they turned around one day and said, we're going to do it. Like, they're not going to spend the next 6 months saying, oh yeah, the Greens are right, we better change our policy to them. But the pressure will build up behind the scenes because it's coming from the public. And then bang, one day when they realise that their electoral success may hinge on it, bang, they'll turn around and do something. That's and if we can't get this government to do it, I still think the pathway to action is to turf this government out, get back into a power sharing arrangement, and then start cutting climate pollution.
It's just the goal of this government, right? When marriage equality happened and Turnbull's walking around going, yeah, we brought marriage equality to Australia. And like ScoMo's walking around going, yeah, well, we brought fibre to the home to Australia. It's like, yeah, we're going to kill you and then fucking fix you up a little bit later. Then you can thank us later. Adam Van, thank you so much for joining us on A Rational Fear.
Thank you.
Now, to take us out, Geraldine, you've got a song all about welcome the audience back to live venues.
Yeah, well, yes, as a Victorian, it was really wonderful to hear a bit of news about the music industry of Melbourne from Dandrews. But yeah, I've got a little song just about how it's been a bit weird for us people who are used to being on stage in front of other humans. And yeah, I'd be more than happy to share it with you if you give me a moment to pick up my guitar.
Take it away.
Edit point. Seriously, you're going to have to edit this bit out.
No, that's fine. No, we're leaving it in.
It's all gold.
Please don't.
No, we'll cut it out.
This would be the bit where my dog walks in and goes,
Adam,
what are you doing?
If you can join us at the end, that'd be great. We're almost done.
All right. Does that sound okay? Because
yes, good.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. I've got no room. Okay. Shit. I might fuck it up. I really hope I don't. Thanks for listening to the pod today as we struggle through this bloody plague. We've been online for a while. We don't know when we'll get back on stage. We're so glad that you seem to like what we do, even when it is confronting for you. And if you think that we should all be committed, you should hear some of the stuff we omitted when you're safely tucked up in your bed with all this news rattling through your head. If it's driving you mad, imagine being us instead. Almost every Every song to which you sing along came out of a brain that can be pretty wrong. But you love it, don't you? You'll come back, won't you? If the words are patchy, at least the tune is catchy. Just by making your way through the doors, you'll make us your benevolent cause. So we really hope we'll see you when we all get to perform again. Hey, I just want to say thanks to Dan and to Lewis for asking me to come on. Really great to meet you too, Lizzie. And Adam, we stand the band. Please, when it's safe for us all to get back out there and you see our names pop up, whether it's on a ballot sheet or in the comedy festival program, please choose us. We're so lonely. But you love it, don't you? You'll come back, won't you? If the words are patchy, at least the tune is catchy. Just by making your way through the doors, you'll make us your benevolent cause. And if anything you've heard gives you pause, remember they're our problems, not yours.
Yes, fantastic. Woo! Thank you so much, Geraldine Quinn. That's it for Irrational Fear. Please thank our fearmongers for tonight, Lizzie Ho, Geraldine Quinn, Lewis Hobber, and Adam Bant. Got anything to plug? Geraldine, you got anything to plug?
Oh, please just look me up on YouTube and find my Patreon. I've been putting out a music video every month, and all but one of them so far have been in my unit.
Lizzie Ho.
Oh, I've got nothing to plug. Just stay safe.
Adam Bant, what are you plugging?
Vote Greens.
And Lewis Hobber, what have you got to plug?
Nothing new, Dan.
I've got something to plug. Next week, we have a US election special. We've got a crazy good lineup. We've got Dave Anthony from The Dollop, Francesca Fiorentini from AJ Plus and TYT, and also the Mooch is joining us. Anthony Scaramucci, formerly of the White House, currently of the Lincoln Project, is joining us right here on the Irrational Fear podcast. If you want to hear it a day early, join us on the Patreon. If you want to see it live, and you are a Patreon member, you can watch it at 8 a.m. on Thursday morning on the Patreon. Big thank you to Dave Bluestein, Rupert Daygas, Jacob Brown, Kate Holsworth, Bertha Foundation, all of our Patreon supporters as well. Please join us next week for our US election special with the Mooch. Until next week, there's always something to be scared of. Good night.
That was great.
That was so much fun. Thank you much. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Adam.
Brilliant. That's going to be an amazing show next week. That's what a get.
I know. He just I think Lewis and I were joking about it on Twitter, or someone was joking about it on Twitter, and he dumped in my DMs and said, "Yeah, just give me a call. I'll do it."
What a nut. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Well, we had Ben Rhodes on a few months back, so the Mooch is like only one step down.
Yeah, but Ben's good, The Mooch is nuts. It's going to be so weird.
But he's doing the Lincoln Project. I think that's interesting. So he's raising money for the Lincoln Project, and there are a bunch of conservatives who are trying to get Trump out. They're not going to work. It's not going to work, but it's still.
They're interesting.
It's so bizarre. I'm really curious to know how that goes. Anyway,
thank you so much, everyone. Thank
you for having me.
Thank you, Geraldine.
Thank you. Bye.
That was awesome. See you
guys. That was great fun. Thanks, Blake.
I did fuck up a chord.
Oh no! Geraldine, thank you. That was absolutely after the heavy conversation we had with Adam, that was a wonderful way to end the show.
Oh, well, if you didn't notice I fucked up a chord, I did fuck up a chord. So sorry. But if it sounded all right to a layperson, I'm sure it's fine.
Sounded great to me. And,
great.
And
all
you
right.
sounded great, and you were really funny. And I think...
thanks for asking me. I don't get asked much. So I
know. I was just like, Geraldine should come on. She's so funny. She's so funny. She's funny on so great.
All right, get out of here. I'm going to go to bed and give this dog a dentist stick. Not in that order.
Bye.